Welcome and thank you for your choice in listening to Lit Muses podcast with your host, Beryl. Lit Muses has guest performances that include varied literary themes and genres such as monologues, spoken word, short stories, haiku, and poetry. We are motivated in making our podcast ADA accessible. Our first guest is Hope Harley, who will be performing a monologue from Pearl Clutch's Flying West. Before Hope presented her choice of monologues, I absolutely knew nothing about Pearl Clutch or Flying West. The play is a historical fiction set in the real town of Nicodemus, Kansas in 1898. Clutch's sensitivity as a writer is particularly revealed through her characterization of women. She points out her protagonist's strengths, such as leadership and their strong bond with other women, while celebrating them as the heroes of their stories. Her idea to write Flying West was sparked after she read an article written by Ida B. Wells in the 1890s, where Ida was urging African Americans to leave their homes in Memphis for the West in search of freedom. Pearl Clutch is an African American playwright and uses this medium to portray the fortitude of black women, their struggle for existence in the dominant patriarchal society. Actually, that's what it sounds like living today is in 2022. And these women that Clutch portrayed can tide over any difficult situation in their lives. Hope is playing the character of Miss Leah, who is a 73-year-old woman who spent most of her life in slavery. She is feisty, demands respect, speaks her mind, and believes strongly in the oral tradition. After her performance, we will have a conversation with Hope and her thoughts about Flying West.
Am I feeling alright? If I was you, I'd be worrying about folks talking about shooting somebody. That's who I'd be worrying about. It's a messy business shooting folks. It ain't like killing a hog, you know. Sheriff got to come. White folks got to come. All that come with shooting somebody. But folks die in all kinds of ways. Sometimes they be going along just as nice as you please, and their heart just give out, just like that. Don't nobody know why. Things just happen. One day, a little bit before I left the plantation, Colonel Harrison bought him a new cook, Ella. She was a big, strong woman. She didn't make no trouble either. Just worked hard and kept to herself. Ella knew a lot about herbs, what to put in to make it taste good. Colonel Harrison just loved the way she cooked. He used to let her roam all over the plantation picking her wild herbs to put in her soups and stews. And she wouldn't tell nobody what she used. Said it was secrets from Africa. White folks didn't need to know. Colonel Harrison just laughed. He was eating good and didn't care about where it come from, no way. But after a while, that overseer started messing around her, trying to get Colonel Harrison to let him have his way with her. But Colonel Harrison said no and told him to stay from around her. She belonged in the kitchen. But that old overseer still wanted her, and everybody knew the next time he had a chance, he was going to get her. So one day, Colonel Harrison went to town. Gonna be gone all day. So that overseer put some poor colored man in charge of our misery. And he walked on up to the house like he the master now that Colonel Harrison had gone off. And when he walked up onto the back porch, he had one thing on his mind. But Ella had been up early too. And the first thing he saw, before he even saw her, was a fresh apple pie cooling in the window. And it smelled so good, he almost forgot what he come for. And Ella opened up the screen door, and she smiled like he the person she wanted to see most in this world. And she asked him if he'd like a glass of cold milk and a piece of her hot apple pie. Of course he did. What man wouldn't? And he sat down there and she cut him a big old slice. And she told him it was hot and to be careful not to burn himself. And do you know what happened? Well, he never got to finish that piece of pie Ella cut for him so pretty. Heart just stopped right in the middle of a great big bite. By the time the master got home, they had him laid out in the barn, and Ella was long gone. But she did do one last thing before she left. She gave me her recipe for apple pie.
I hope that you've enjoyed Hope as Miss Leah as much as I have. I'm happy to introduce Hope Harley for our conversation part of the podcast. I want to thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be Lit Muses podcast's first guest performer.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So you chose to perform a monologue from Pearl Cledge's Flying West. You also alerted me to the fact that I was pronouncing Pearl's last name, Cledge, incorrectly. So if you would let me know what or how it is supposed to sound, please do.
Well, I was also pronouncing it incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was saying that it's Pearl Cleage.
Right.
But after I heard you say Cledge, I said, well, maybe it's Cledge.
Mm-hmm.
So I went online and I found an actual interview with Pearl Clegg.
Wow.
Clegg. And
Yes.
I said, oh.
So let's move on from there. The genre of this particular play I read, because I did a lot of research once you told me about the monologue and the playwright, I knew nothing about Pearl or Flying West. So in doing some of the research, I found that the genre for this particular play is considered a historical fiction because it is based on a true place and an historical time in America. What were your thoughts on Pearl Clegg and playing Flying West character Miss Leah?
Well, I know that you did a lot more research than I did, because I've never actually done the full play, but I've seen it,
Mm-hmm.
and because the play is, I would say, produced fairly frequently at companies throughout the country. But I saw it probably a decade ago, and I always liked it. because women are the dominant characters in the play. It's female heavy, and they're not weak characters. They're all strong characters with their own thoughts and their own ambitions and all of that. So I thought that was interesting. And there's a lot of humor in the play.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's education in the play, because I didn't know about Nicodemus, Kansas, and never even thought about women post enslavement moving out on their own, being independent. It's
Right.
not something that you associate with the late 1800s
Right.
for any race of women,
Mm-hmm.
for any woman, but for Black women in particular, never even considered that might be a possibility.
Right.
So yeah, I just always liked the themes of the play. So.
Right. Well, I had read that Pearl was commissioned to do this play by a theater called the Alliance Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she was inspired to do it actually by reading something that was written by Ida B. Wells in the late 1890s, where she was writing women or families to leave Memphis and to go out west, to gain their own freedom, from all of the things that were happening.
Economic freedom, yeah.
Economic freedom, but also freedom from the Jim Crow that was happening in the South after slavery was over. Because it even though the actual slavery was over, the hate-filled feeling that was left over was still there and very dominant. Still is. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed learning about this play, because it's something that I feel as though if it was done today, it would do a service to people because of the historic meaning and the outcome.
Right.
So
I agree. I think that's the mark of a good play.
Right.
That the play in whatever time it's in, translates well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Pearl Cleage, we gonna pronounce her name right.
Right.
Did a fantastic job, because the play is almost 30 years old now.
Right. But it's definitely apropos for today's setting in so many ways. The fact that, women's rights have been recently taken away by the Supreme Court's decision to end Roe versus Wade. So the craziness that's happening in our government from the ex-president on down is something again that can be thought of as well. She's noted as an African-American playwright that is a playwright of the Theater of Revolt, which is a place where playwrights can voice their opinions and oppositions to social changes and injustices. This is I found out in my research about her and the play. And the Theater of Revolt is where radical ideas are born, challenging the status quo. So that this could definitely be done today and enjoyed by the public.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So you said that the reason why you chose the play was because of it having the abundance of women as characters. And is there any particular reason that you chose to play Miss Leah?
Well, I chose Miss Leah, first of all, because she's in my age group.
Mm-hmm.
She's the oldest character in the play.
Okay.
And And I liked the humor of this monologue. I just liked her overall attitude throughout the play.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had an opportunity, even though the play has been done many times over the years, I've never had an opportunity to even audition for a production.
Right.
And I almost came close because a couple of friends of mine who live here in Teaneck, New Jersey, a few years ago, started a company called Who's on the Stage, a theater company. And the first year we did just readings. We chose some readings, and the three of us worked on readings from plays and poems and things like that. In 2019, I guess, we expanded to monologues and scenes from plays using other actors as well. And I had considered doing this monologue from Flying West. In fact, I think we also considered doing a scene from Flying West, but that got pushed by the wayside, didn't do it. So when you asked me, to do something.
Yeah, pick a monologue. Yes.
I said, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is it right here.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I want to tell you did such an excellent job that I hope that it will be on YouTube as well as my website. So outside of the podcast, if people want to see you in that performance, I will be giving a link on the on SoundCloud so that people can refer to it. And also, I'm trying to also be ADA accessible. So I'm hoping that it will be looked at because of the closed captions and transcriptions, that people of all different audiences will also be able to enjoy it. So
I think that's great, Bea.
Yeah. I really would like, that to be part of my whole podcasting, production. When did you decide to get into acting? Because it's not something that you've always done. Let us know the journey you went through to get to the point that you're at now.
Okay. Well, I started out as a child.